So I'm James Krause. I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing for HSS. And Hospitality Staffing Solutions works with hotels and resorts. And so, as you can imagine, our business has been impacted severely by this crisis. And so, joining me today is Luke Lindahl, who is the Senior Vice President at Hospitality Staffing Solutions. And Luke and I have been working with senior living facilities to redeploy a lot of our workers there. And so what we thought we'd do today is just kind of talk about that experience, talk about how we are working with senior living facilities, and just basically how HSS has kind of made this pivot and kind of what lays ahead. So Luke, maybe just describe for everyone, the kind of basics of how we're working with senior living facilities and kind of what that pivot's been about.
Yeah, sure. No, happy to. And thanks, James. So, and maybe just a little bit of context here. So in the United States, there are 50,000 hotels, and HSS staffs around 1,000 of them, give or take, on any given day. So a pretty large footprint of workers. So let's just call it, 8 to 10,000 housekeepers. They're out in hotels on any given day, cleaning every kind of brand from a Ramada to a Ritz-Carlton or a Four Seasons, right? So just really wide experience in hotels. And on the senior living side, what's also interesting, which I've learned quite a bit in the last month or so, there are 60,000 senior living facilities in the United States, right? And a very close geographic overlay, very close in terms of the number of locations. And they look a lot like, in some cases, a lot like what a hotel would be. So on the senior living side, there is assisted living, independent living, skilled nursing facilities, things like that. On an independent living community for a senior living property looks a lot like a hotel or a timeshare condominium project. You're going to have apartments. You're going to have 200 to 400 unit resident apartment complexes with the same amenities that you would see in a normal hotel. You're going to have public area, kitchens, full service kitchen, food, room service, grounds, maintenance, activities, exercise room, public area space, all those kind of things. So really, really close alignment in terms of the type of work environment that a housekeeper inside of a hotel would see at at an independent living facility. So, just kind of broadly, they're very closely lined up. The same type of job descriptions. Housekeeper at a hotel property is going to have a very similar set of job duties to a housekeeper at a senior living facility, with some kind of known differences. But what we're finding is it's a very easy transition for a lot of our workers to be able to step foot into a senior living facility and come right up to speed with their clean requirements because they're so closely aligned. I'll give you a couple examples. Some of the largest chemical providers in the country, Ecolab, have a hospitality vertical and they have a medical vertical. And part of their medical vertical is the senior living space. So the same chemicals and supplies that we're using on a day-to-day basis in a hotel are the exact same, yellow, blue, and pink chemicals that we're seeing in the Ecolab dispensaries at a senior living facility. The exact same kind of chemicals. The same type of clean requirements exist on a hotel as do in a senior living facility. You're going to have high touch and low touch points. You're going to have linen and laundry considerations. You're going to have trash pulling. You're going to have bathrooms. You're going to have a kitchenette or a full kitchen in some cases. And you're going to have a similar type of, call it productivity range also. In a hotel, a housekeeper cleans, somewhere around between 15 and 20 rooms per day, depending on checkouts or stayovers. And in a senior living facility, they're doing a similar type productivity, just over a smaller number of units. Average senior living facility is going to have in between 50 and 100 units. An average hotel is going to have between 100 and 200. So very, very similar in terms of the job description, in terms of the chemicals and supplies being used. Very similar in terms of the clean requirements. Where in a hotel environment, you'll have a kind of a high degree of called amenities laid out that might take a little bit of extra time in room. On a senior living facility, you're going to have a lot of personal items. You're going to have personal items that are in rooms that you have to clean around, right? So the same kind of care and clean touch points that we train folks on in hotels translates almost exactly into the environment that they're doing inside senior living.
Yeah, and I think what's been interesting is that when we first did the outreach to a lot of the senior living facilities, we were really focusing on cleaning. But what we found was that there was a lot of need in food and beverage as well, which is something we knew that there was always a need for. But this crisis has kind of heightened that quite a bit. I think because a lot of the senior living facilities are looking at there being a staffing crunch down the road, or just kind of an unknown factor. Can you talk a little bit about just how a lot of the senior living management companies have benefited from, or what they can benefit from working with a national partner like HSS?
No, sure. No, it's a good question. So let's just take some of the big brands that we're working with. When you have a management or a brand inside of a senior living vertical that has 200 units or 400 units or 150 units, a big concern of theirs is going to be consistent coverage across all of their locations, both direct as well as kind of remote locations. So you're going to have, let's just take a state like Georgia. You're going to have a heavy concentration in and around Atlanta, Savannah, Athens, Augusta, but you're also going to have things that are 100 miles out, 200 miles out of a major metropolitan city. And keeping that staffing coverage is so important at one of those senior living sites because you have a limited number of staff. You might have 2 housekeepers on a site, or you might have 1 maintenance person, or you might have 1 dishwasher, you might have 2 or 3 dietary aides, people that are kind of food running. And in a small environment like that, if you have one call off, or if you have 2 people that aren't available to go to work for whatever reason, it's a massive impact to their organization. I think that's probably one of the biggest fears that I hear from these senior living management companies is what do I do when I've got absenteeism? What do I do when I have a call off? How am I gonna spin up quickly within 24 hours a replacement for a housekeeper that is going to stay home and either self-quarantine or for whatever reason can't go to work, or whatever it is? How am I gonna solve that problem? So I think one of the things that we're helping our customers with, I think most people in the space are trying to figure this out, is from a central standpoint, right? So from a corporate office, how do I ensure that I have coverage everywhere, right? How do I ensure that sites aren't having to an executive director at a site isn't having to stop what they're doing in terms of patient care or guest care and then switch over to spending 24 hours for that week recruiting a replacement housekeeper. That time that they have to spend on guest care and also really maintaining that facility and keeping all of their kind of compliance rules going, they don't have time. They don't have the time to stop. And without some kind of centralized support, you can find people that are going to stop doing that first part of it to focus on getting the resident care, or stop on the management role, step in and do it themselves. I think that's one thing that we saw quite a bit of in terms of working with the first couple brands on this, is that they have what they call a universal worker in the senior living space, and that's a person that does everything from resident care all the way to dishwashing, right? Well, there's an extra burden on those folks right now. There's a huge extra burden on those folks. And if you can free up their very precious time for resident care by making sure there's a dishwasher getting all that done, it helps absenteeism on the nurse side. It helps call-offs. It helps turnover. It has a big impact to their organization to be able to know that they got that replacement person to fill. So I think one thing that we're trying to work with our customers on, I think most people are in this boat, is how do we ensure that we've got coverage everywhere, so that way we can make sure that if there's an absentee or a call off or whatever it is, or just extra staffing required, which we're also seeing that we get that across a broad base. And we're doing that centrally, right? So instead of going kind of site by site and letting those on-site managers make those decisions, because quite honestly, they have a lot of work to do. They're taking that, off of them by, kind of catching the call-offs and catching the orders and making sure that they get placed out to a company like HSS and then filled quickly.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of compliance, I know that when we first entered into this space, that was a concern of ours. But HSS is actually set up quite well to be able to basically follow the rules that each of the individual management companies require. So, in working with a lot of our customers in the hotel sector, they have hiring requirements. The hiring requirements on the senior living side are different, but they're consistent, and we're able to basically meet those requirements in the same kind of way.
Yep, that's 100% right. And similar to a hotel brand, you have senior living brands, management companies, single owners, owners and management companies. You have that same kind of hierarchy that we see in the hotel side. And we're very comfortable with doing it, but I think there's a lot of folks that really focus in on how do we make sure that your brand standards are met, we're meeting all your hiring requirements, we're following all the rules that you have centrally for onboarding folks. A lot of cases, what we're doing is the pre-temperature check as people are kind of checking in for first day, announcing for all the information they need for punching in and badging in locations, as well as meeting all the background check, drug tests, and hiring requirements that are, I think state required in these facilities, but to make sure that we're able to administer that across all the different locations. I think one thing from a compliance standpoint, and this is the same in hotels as it is in senior living, brands are worried about individual hotels, selecting a provider that's not going to meet those requirements, right? They're worried about people making site-by-site decisions. I think on the senior living side, because of the heightened, nature of that guest base or that customer base for the residents, they have the same kind of concerns. So I think partnering with a company like HSS helps, kind of check that box a little bit, because we can ensure that all people, that go out there meet their hiring requirements. Our system is uniquely set up to prevent people from punching in, punching out until they've been activated in our system, which means that they've gone through vetted compliance. We got a VP of compliance administration, VP of risk. We have a full compliance department to make sure that we're meeting all those requirements. So it was interesting as we first started talking to senior living companies. I mean, just light bulbs going off everywhere, because this is a company that gets it. They understand exactly how to do this centralized ordering and the distributed staffing model. It's very similar to the hotel industry.
I also want to just add in that we've been working with our parent company, KBS. KBS has been able to offer services to senior living facilities, really kind of on the facility management side of things. And part of what they offer is a post-COVID incident cleanup, as well as deep cleaning services. So again, working with a national provider to be able to give quotes on kind of those either recurring or one-time cleaning capabilities is something that we've been able to offer as well. And we'll put some links in below the video on that too. Look, I just want to kind of wrap up with talking about one of the things that has struck me about the conversations we've been having with management companies is how they're looking for a long-term partner. Obviously, this crisis is here now, and we're working through it. But we all know that it's going to be over at some point. But there are all the conversations that I've had, I think you've had, have been really centered around wanting an ongoing partner, an ongoing partnership, and we certainly want that as well as we return to the hotel industry and that business ramps back up. We're not looking to turn our backs on this industry either. Can you talk about what's driving that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, and actually just got another email about this morning. So the general feedback we're getting from our customers in the senior living space is that our associates, our housekeepers or public area folks or food runners, dietary aides, kitchen prep, kitchen cook, those kind of folks, they love our team. They absolutely love our team, right? The level of clean requirement, the personality, the attention to detail, the attitude, all of it's really lining up well. And I think there's a kind of a root reason why. In the hospitality industry, there is, there's the 10-5 rule, right? You greet somebody visually at 10 feet, and at 5 feet, you greet them orally, right? You say hello, right? So there is a natural need to be hospitable in that group. We teach people how to interact with guests. We teach people how to respect personal space in terms of going to guest rooms. We teach people how to, kind of wash and clean your hotel room, respecting your personal space, all the items that you've left in the hotel. Finding a person that has that kind of personality, that kind of dedication to what they're doing takes time and takes screening. And that's one thing that we do a lot of is we take, 100 folks that come in through the top of the funnel and we screen out the 5 at the bottom that we know are going to be fantastic workers for the hospitality industry. That kind of high screening requirement, generates a really, quality cleaner in a hotel environment. That same person migrates perfectly interacting with senior living facilities. These are folks that require, the same level of hospitality, touch, and care that you do for a hotel, right? Folks live there full time. Their personal stuff is there, right? They have interactions with caregivers that are on site. It's a very intimate and personal, a relationship. Respecting that and respecting that space is something that our team does really well. And I think we're getting lots of feedback from our senior living customer partners now that it's just a really good alignment. It's a really good alignment, a really good fit to find hospitality workers that are used to cleaning a Four Seasons or a Ritz-Carlton and all the high, clean requirements that occur there, and then putting them into a senior living environment. That same kind of hospitality focus, I think, is just coming across. So I think one thing that's making that successful is just a really nice alignment of how those job requirements line up, but the type of worker that we're looking for in hospitality works out very well in these senior living facilities. I think they're a really nice complement to the workforce that's there. And I think also, just to your other question about kind of what's driving it, I think absenteeism right now is at an all-time high across the country. I think a lot of people are making choices about work versus home, right, based on priorities. I think there are concerns about, call it schedules and work environments that people are also making decisions about. And I think the overall clean requirement everywhere is going up, right? So where you might have had to touch all entry and exit touch points in a hotel or senior living facility once every 2 days, you're doing it once every day or 3 times a day, right? So you've had to increase the clean requirement. So I think all of that together is really driving a really nice marriage right now between, hotel workers and what's needed in the senior living space.
Great, Luke. I think it's a great place to kind of wrap things up here. If you are a small management company, if you've got a single facility, or if you've got hundreds across the nation, we're happy to talk to you. I'll put in some links below, but you can always go to hssstaffing.com. And we're looking forward to having more of these conversations in the senior living space. We've had quite a few of them in the last few weeks, which has been great. But we're always happy to have more. So please get in touch with us. Let's talk about it. Set up a master service agreement, and just start solving problems out there. All right. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll talk soon.